Our top story today, sources say the Justice Department has wrapped up its investigation into the killing of unarmed black teenager Michael Brown. White police officer Darren Wilson pulled the trigger 12 times, hitting Michael Brown with at least 6 bullets right in the middle of the street in broad daylight in Ferguson. The official federal report finds no evidence that federal civil rights laws were broken, and the FBI completed interviews with more than 200 people, and agents have reviewed dozens of surveillance tapes and cell phone footage, all of a part of their effort to piece together exactly what happened on that day. The FBI turned over their full report to the federal prosecutors, and they will not be pressing any criminal civil rights charges against Officer Wilson. Of course, Wilson was already cleared by the St. Louis County grand jury months ago, and that decision sparked several nights of violent protests, vandalism, looting, and hundreds of arrests. A raucous disruption at the United States Supreme Court on Wednesday. The protest took place on the 5th anniversary of the High Court's Citizen United ruling that freed corporations and labor unions to spend as much as they want on elections for Congress and president. Supreme Court police arrested 7 people who shouted in the courtroom as the justices took the bench. And this is the second protest of its kind at the court in under a year. There is a growing sense of general protest surrounding transparency in the Supreme Court, all federal courts for that matter, and as they currently outlaw recording devices of any kind inside the buildings. Speaking of the Supreme Court, there is another ruling coming down, and this one is catching a lot of people off guard. You don't normally expect the Supreme Court to rule in favor of a whistleblower, someone that spoke out against the federal government. But that's what we're seeing here today. The nation's high court ruled 7-2 against the president's arguments. Obama's administration filed an appeal to further discredit and punish Robert McClain. He is the former U.S. Air Marshal who spoke up about wrongdoing years ago, back in 2003. President Obama wasn't even in the office at the time, and still the White House tried to overrule a prior decision that protected McClain's right to come forward and speak up about the wrongdoing in government. The Obama leadership has come under harsh criticism in recent days for taking such a hardline stance against any dissidents or any whistleblowers. Critics say that this kind of power play is dangerous because it can quickly create a culture that breeds corruption or cover-ups. If federal employees feel threatened, they are much less likely to speak up if they see a crime or something out of order. McClain was fired in 2006 and now works in the private sector for a construction company. He says that he is doing fine today, but this victory in the Supreme Court will still have an impact on government. McClain said, "I believe the ruling will give other federal employees more confidence to expose wrongdoing." McClain was fired after reporting that the TSA purposely chose not to protect certain long-distance flights in the years right after 9/11. That didn't sit well with the American public, and he eventually lost his job over it. Now, several watchdog groups are hailing this as a victory for transparency in the federal government.
Tell me how we're going to do the things that need to be done. Tell me how we get to yes.
Fresh off of his State of the Union address, President Obama hits the road to sell the ideas that he delivered on Tuesday night. And some analysts say the president had a certain swagger or conceit to his approach. And that tone didn't sit well with so many Republicans, some of them with plans to take his job in 2 years' time. And you might not guess which state the president visited first after his State of the Union address. Idaho. It's a conservative state where he got less than 1/3 of the vote in his last election. At the speech, organizers hung a banner emphasizing Obama's sales pitch to the middle class. Boise State University is just the latest stop in a series of tours around the country in recent weeks. Now that the sting of the November election has worn off, the president appears rejuvenated and full of energy, ready to attack the Republican-controlled Congress.
Miners in Kosovo have staged an underground protest after government officials announced the closing of the Trepka mine. The government said they would help take over the mine and save it from bankruptcy, but then retracted their statement. Now that the mine faces a shutdown, workers are sitting at almost 1,000 feet below ground, refusing to come above the surface. The sit-in has continued for over 24 hours, waiting out a response from up above. Due to diplomatic talks between Serbia and Kosovo, the mine's fate has been put on the back burner. Serbia is yet to acknowledge the independence of Kosovo and claims it owns 3/4 of the mine.
We have only one request: to return the law back to the original procedure at the Parliament of the Republic of Kosovo, so Trepča can be transformed from a socially owned enterprise to a public-owned enterprise. This is our only request.
Outrage following the Charlie Hebdo attacks has ignited rallies across the world. A leader for anti-Islam demonstrations has now resigned after posing in a magazine as Adolf Hitler and dressed as a Ku Klux Klan member. The head of the Patriotic Europeans Against the Islamization of the West, Lutz Bachmann, stepped down after a large amount of backlash from the photo's release. Bachmann apologized, saying, "I'm sorry that I thereby damaged the interest of our movement and draw the appropriate conclusion." His spokesperson said that the picture was allegedly an act of satire. A scheduled protest in Dresden was canceled due to the pictures. Police told Pegida that they feared for the safety of the group. Decriminalization of marijuana has become more and more popular throughout the world. Countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina have all lightened their grip on the drug. Now Jamaica is heading towards the same direction. A bill allowing the cultivation and sale of medical marijuana is about to hit the Jamaican Senate. The cabinet has already approved the new regulations, including the ban of smoking in public places. Although marijuana has been illegal in the country since 1913, the U.S. states Jamaica is the largest Caribbean supplier of marijuana.